Stray was kind of weird, but I kind of liked it. Throughout the PS5's lifespan so far, the games have been relatively okay. Demon's Souls remake I was extremely pleased with, and was the game that made me go back and try out the other Souls games, and for that I will always be extremely grateful. I've not played Ratchet and Clank yet, but I've only heard positive stuff, and Forbidden West is a game that is this year is definitely in my Game of the Year nominations. Of course, there's many other exclusives that have been released so far that I've not mentioned, but throughout the lineup so far, I've seen a pattern occur, and I think this will have more of an impact on the industry moving forward, and I promise this connects to Stray and my review of the game. Just stick with me. And also, before we get into the video, if you do enjoy it, make sure to leave a like or comment, as it greatly helps with the algorithm. And if you want to see more from me, make sure to subscribe. But without further ado, back to Stray. This pattern starts with the biggest game in it, Miles Morales. Miles Morales is a short 46-hour long experience that has every aspect of a AAA game bundled into a smaller experience. Now, we have seen these type of non-DLC continuation games that are meant to fill the gap in between a series' main releases previously. An example that jumps to my mind right now is Assassin's Creed Rogue, and I've never even given them much thought since they aren't ever particularly in the main spotlight much compared to the mainline games in their respective series. But I think Miles Morales has started a trend in the PlayStation 5 lineup specifically to do with these smaller but more meaningful experiences that are way more accessible to the general public. The next game that would be in this pattern is Sifu. Now, this game I would say is even more of a staple in this trend, as it's a standalone IP that is a roguelike, and to introduce that form into a way that is accessible for a number of people that don't have the hours you need to put into a game like Elden Ring or Dark Souls, or God to mention the game I mention every single video, Hades. It's a great thing to see, and by far the weirdest game in this pattern recently has been Stray. Through its short 4-hour experience as a cat in a robot infested world, I think it does and tells us many more things than I think the reviews and critics are giving it credit for. And I don't want to sound like a pretentious writer or an English teacher, but everything in the game, from the theme of what constitutes humanity down to the fact that as a cat you can go to sleep in pretty much anywhere, has meaning in it. So grab a drink or a snack for however long this video will be, and let me talk your ear off about the weirdest game I have played this year. Hi, Aidan.R here. I'm recording this at 1 in the morning. At this time, I just checked, Luke Stevens has actually changed his original video, the thumbnail and the title and all that. It originally was excuse my lack of script. It was originally campaigning to not buy Stray, and that is the whole point when I talk about his video later in this. But for anyone that's confused after checking his video before watching this, that is what originally was. I'm happy that he changed it, but him still saying the stuff he does in the video and all that, it's still not a particularly good look. But that's all I wanted to say. Back to the video. It was in 2015 that Stray started development or concept at BlueTwelve Studios, and I think the gaming atmosphere at the time has to really be taken into consideration, as I think a lot of what Stray tries to say is a consequence of what was happening in terms of issues in the industry at the time, and even currently, specifically around how developers make games for people. Now, that sentence may sound weird, but it will make sense in my coming points. Around that time, in the years to come, a lot of big AAA games began to expand their worlds and scope. With the technology in the PS4s and Xbox Ones, it was possible. We got games like Fallout 4, Witcher 3, Red Dead 2, and ending the generation Ghost of Tsushima, among many others, but the consequence of having all these big games has created fatigue in a lot of people. And in nowhere do I see it most in the reactions to From Software's newest title, Elden Ring, and the biggest sequel of the year, Horizon Forbidden West. As good as these games are, I think a lot of gamers have reached the peak of what could be considered open world fatigue. These worlds are becoming simply too big and far too common. We don't get enough small experiences anymore, to the point where, for me personally, even a game that's 10 to 20 hours like Amore, which I just recently finished, seemed like a tiring process at points, despite the quality of the product. And when developing Stray, I specifically think the developers wanted to keep it short for that reason. There are also other reasons that I will get onto in other sections, but that will have to wait. The reception upon Stray's reveal in 2020 and release this year has been beyond good for the team. It had so many 9s and 10s that you probably couldn't count all of them on both hands. However, there has been a lot of criticism towards it also, specifically in length and pricing, and the person who I think has probably the largest video covering this point is Luke Stevens. Now, when I critique Luke's video at any point, or just create a point that adjourns one of his, I just want people to know that opinions are subjective and nothing is personal. I respect his work and a lot of the effort he puts into his videos, but his video on Stray is one I can agree with, and do feel the need to talk about when analysing the game from a narrative, design and thematic perspective. Now, finally getting on to what the game actually is, you play as a stray cat in a world without humans, and in a city that has been trapped underground, presumably as a plan humans had to save themselves from the degrading world at the time. It's quite a meta commentary on what the possible future of our world at the moment could look like, but that's another conversation for another time. Your objective is to make it out of this robotic head-crabbed infested city and make it to the surface back to your cat buddies who you lost at the beginning of the game. Now, that is pretty simple. It's an adventure puzzle game. You walk around, help fix NPCs' problems, and eventually progress your own objective. And what I want to preface is yes, the gameplay is incredibly simple. A majority of the time you don't really particularly have to use a lot of brain power to get through the game, as the puzzles aren't difficult whatsoever, and through the help of your trusty robot companion, you've basically always got a reminder of your main objective, and this is essentially the formula until you release the roof, showing sunlight to the robots, and finally escape the underground city, presumably off to find your lost litter of brothers and sisters. It's a 4-hour story at most, with very nice and meaningful themes behind it, but it's a game that is built on its love the player has for its setting and taking a bit of a breather, and is also another point I found in this game that connects to its opposition to these three big AAA open world games. Taking it back to the gameplay loop, a lot of Stray's gameplay is story focused, as a majority of the important NPCs progresses the story, which is not bad at all, but it leaves the player sometimes with nothing outside of that. That is, if you don't explore. Now, I do want to emphasise that the exploration gameplay is quite boring and mindless, as you can't be punished for messing up. You can't mess up a jump, as there is a dedicated jump button that only allows you to jump on specific objects. It restricts the player and does bring down the enjoyability of the experience greatly, and is a massive criticism I do have towards this game. But if you're able to deal with that and stop and just take a minute to explore and immerse yourself in this game's world, you will see how much depth and beauty it has. It takes a big risk on putting faith in the player to enjoy these moments of just talking to these robots, collecting music sheets and many other things in the game. It relies on those moments of levity in between the story, and I truly believe if you don't do that, you haven't enjoyed the game to its maximum potential. Racing through this game at Mach 1 is not the way to experience it. The small things that are there to just take a break and enjoy the unique world you've been placed in, like being able to sleep while listening to this little robot play guitar from sheet music you collected, contrasting all this with a game like Assassin's Creed Odyssey or Horizon Forbidden West. Are there times where you can stand and look at the world and take a breather? Yes, there is, but a majority of the time you're going from quest to collectible to bandit camp, and so on and so forth. You lose yourself in the content that puts a 20-hour experience to a 48-hour experience, but in some cases it is content that does not matter or enhance the gameplay formula or the player's enjoyment. And yet a lot of people say that that's what justifies the £60-70 price tag. The fact that companies make games and content that is scared of their players' attention span and the need to always be doing something. Now, am I saying Stray should be that price? God no. But in connection with the length of the experience to the price, I think you should be paying full price for this game. Not to mention the other aspects I'll touch on later in terms of analysis of the world and the story. Keep in mind, before release, Stray was on sale. The developers knew that £30 for a 3 to 4 hour experience would be dicey, and if it was something like Firewatch, where it was purely narrative and just walking, I would have disagreed with the price. But what this game is meant to mean in terms of its message to the industry to make more games that don't rely on overdone and padded gameplay formulas that aren't natural or fun to participate in, and it's only there to fulfill the needs of a sadly vocal minority who need action after action or set piece after set piece, is way too meaningful to me and I'm sure a lot of people. Take examples like Red Dead 2 or Hollow Knight into consideration. Are they big games? Yes, but they don't rely on the player to have an abundance of markers on a map. It relies on the player's curiosity to explore these worlds and take them in bit by bit, and is one of the aspects that make them so loved, but other times called slow and difficult to get into. Now, this criticism doesn't fall on Stray per se, as it is a short experience, but instead of it being called slow and hard to get into, it's simply labelled with the experience being too short, simply because these players don't use their curiosity and blast right through the story. Now, there are parts of this that Hollow Knight and Red Dead 2 do extremely better than Stray. I'm not saying they did it perfectly, but I am saying they did this well enough anyway. As I said before, movement and player freedom is still in need of improvement. It's not exactly the most engaging thing to be running across roofs just pressing X, knowing there is no risk involved at all. But those moments where it really matters, like sitting on a bar listening to the robots around you, or going to sleep listening to a tune being played on a guitar, which is actually the standout moment Luke Stevens references in his video, is really the most magical parts of this game, and one of the reasons I highly recommend you get this game. And while collectibles and resting is specific to more open sections, the design of the more linear sections allow you to take in the world building and look at how detailed certain parts like Anti-Village is, and are probably the high points of the game. However, the open sections definitely leave room for even more of those moments and charm to come through. So, should you get Stray at full price? Most definitely, and no disrespect to Luke, we can disagree on pricing and aspects of the game, but promoting the idea that people shouldn't put money into a game made by a new studio that involves a unique and new IP, especially one that advocates for themes that are relevant in the current world, and brings about an underlying message to do with video game design that has been intoxicated by these money-hungry companies, with the large influence of nearly 300k subscribers on your back, and most likely way more overtime viewers, I think does more harm than it does good, and isn't exactly the best message to be putting out there. Specifically when there are way more studios that deserve that level of criticism in a comment, specifically to do with their quality of games and influence on the industry. But again, everything is subjective at the end of the day, and I'm not really looking to change anyone's opinion or make anyone hate Luke. It was just a comment I wanted to make due to how much of this video was centered around the length and price of this game, likewise as his. And to give him credit, he did say that most of the time he wouldn't mind that price tag. It's just a specific criticism to Stray in the video, and so take that as you will, but I still think he should have thought more thoroughly about the message he was trying to portray. The story of Stray is one of simplicity. There aren't complex characters or narrative beats, but it is certainly unique primarily because of who you play as. A stray cat who, for the simplicity of continuity, we will call Stray. I know I'm very creative, you don't have to say it. Stray is a cat, so you can't communicate to anyone. You can only meow with a button prompt, and at very most our robot buddy throughout the game B12, and who we find out is technically the last human alive, just in a robot drone body and who has lost his memory. But making our protagonist completely disconnected from the world we find ourselves in opens the game to having less problems than you would if you would have a robot or a human, because they should have knowledge of what's happening and what's going on. We learn at our own pace, and we don't have our protagonist who is understanding stuff at a slower or faster pace. It's a really nice change of fashion to not have to worry about if we aren't on the same page as our protagonist, as it usually makes you feel really dumb for not getting something, or really stupid to our protagonist for not understanding something faster. And back to our robot friend, he isn't an exposition dump or a lore master of sorts. Throughout the game you find memories and parts of humanity once forgotten and help him piece together an image of his life and the world before becoming a robot, and through this you also help yourself learn more about the world before. It doesn't feel forced or unnatural. There will be parts you find and learn about and other parts that someone in another playthrough will, and everyone will leave this game with a different understanding of the world, and that's kind of really cool. But this kind of gameplay of helping a robot find his humanity again is kind of funneled through the game's theme of being human and asking the question, when does something become worthy of the same prospects? And it's primarily found through the many human-like robots we talk to in our journey. In praise of the writing of each of these robots, they are so unique and lovely to talk to, from the merchant in Dead City to the aggressive officers in Midtown. Each and every NPC just gives off the idea that these aren't just robots, but by the authority of the Sentinels they are still treated as one. In the present act of the game, while making our way through it, the place is run down and basically taken over by nature. There's no mattresses on the bed, and the robots in the courtyard have been stripped of their clothes. And this is because they don't need them. Robots can't feel comfortable. They don't feel the need for things to be clean, and they don't feel the need for robots to be clothed, but robots in Midtown and Dead City are clothed. They go to a bar and drink. One of them you have to give a blanket to because he is cold, and nearly every single one of them would like to see the sky for once. And as I made my way through the game, I constantly kept thinking to myself that these aren't robots. They are practically human. They have human curiosity, human love, and they all care like humans, and the oppression of them not to be truly began to make me question that what is deserving of humanity, and what quantifies being human. It was a theme tackled in Detroit Become Human, but in a short game like this, I'm surprised they were able to communicate it so well and clearly. Big props to the writing team at BlueTwelve for that. This game also handles the consequences of humanity's actions, as the Walled City, the Sentinels and the Zurks, the little headcrab things that chase you, exist all because of humans. Zurks, for example, are man-made bacteria made to eat garbage, but over time became the reason humans were wiped out and robots had to take their place. And Sentinels were the authoritarian police force meant to keep everything in check after the Walled City had been shut off and closed to the outside world. The fact that the objective of this game is to reverse what humanity did begins to become a real driving force for you as you see the consequences firsthand, and the act of opening the roof of the Walled City is to finally, metaphorically and literally, free the robots to continue life from the consequences of the humans that came before them. Not only that, but the fact that opening the roof comes at the cost of the last human, B12, is a kind of way of them entrusting the world to robots and to other lives such as Stray and the other cats you see at the beginning of the game. It's a very beautiful, simple and well written experience, and again is one of the reasons I can't recommend you buy or play this game enough. It has been by far one of my favourite experiences in 2022, and I hope through this video and any others you may watch, you give this game a chance despite what the price tag may say, and I promise you will get your money's worth. That's all I really have to say about Stray. Through the problems and the faults it may have, it is a great and unique experience that I think everyone should at least try out once in their life. Hey, if you got this far into the video, I just want to give my thanks and appreciation. I know I haven't uploaded in a couple months, but you just know how it is. The motivation for videos come and go. You might see a new video next week or next year, but hopefully you'll be seeing some more videos from me in the future soon. So with that all said, I hope you enjoyed my video on Stray. I loved the game, I loved every part of it. Hopefully my next video won't be too long. I don't know, we'll just have to see. I've been Aidan.R, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.